and welcome to Tim Conley Drums. Today I'm going to talk about everything related to being a drum teacher. It's a very interesting thing being a drum teacher, and I'm going to give you my story of becoming a drum teacher. And I've been a drum teacher since basically I was about 20 years old. So I'm going to be 60 in about, I don't know, 9 or 10 days, something like that. So I've got a lot of experience, almost 40 years of teaching drums. And in that time, there has been many, many ups and downs and interesting things. And let me give you the full rundown here. So how I became a drum teacher was actually by accident. I was playing drums at my mother's house. I was in the garage practicing. And all of a sudden, my mother comes into the garage and she says, "There's a kid at the door that wants to talk to you." And I'm like, "What do you mean there's a kid at the door that wants to talk to me?" She says, "A neighborhood kid heard you playing drums. He wants to talk to you about lessons." And I'm like, lessons? At that time, I had not thought about teaching. Now, I had taken many lessons. I started taking lessons when I was 10 years old. I started playing at 7. Then my mother got fed up with me playing basically boom, got, boom, got, boom, boom, got, boom, boom, got. She got tired of hearing the same beats all the time. Signed me up for lessons. So I had taken 10 years of lessons by the time I was 20 years old without a break. I mean, there was a few different teachers in that 10 years at that time, but I hadn't stopped taking any lessons at all. I was very consistent with my lessons. Anyways, I go to the front door. I talk to this kid. We agree. He literally has cash on him. That was the other funny part, was I never thought about making money teaching drums, nothing. So the kid gives me, I think, I don't know, 10 or 15 bucks. So this would have been 1985. I was 20 years old in 1985. He gives me 10 or 15 bucks and says, "Can you teach me something?" Okay. Now, obviously I hadn't prepped for this. I had no training in terms of teaching. I hadn't gone to music school. I didn't know anything except what I had been taught by my teacher. So I just started off by showing them a few different grooves, quarter note groove, eighth note groove. Now, to this day, that hasn't changed. I still teach the exact same grooves I did from that very, very first lesson back 40 years ago. But obviously, my ability to teach it and the technique that's associated with developing that groove obviously has changed over 40 years of teaching, plus my improvement on the instrument, music school, studying with some incredible world-class musicians over the years. And, I've really evolved as a teacher. So basically, I'm sort of going to jump back and forth between when I started developing, and right up till now. Now, when I started teaching that kid, it ended up becoming a weekly and bi-weekly lesson with that kid. I only had the one student. And again, I never really thought about pursuing teaching. It wasn't until, if we fast forward a little bit, it wasn't until I went to music school in the 90s that they offered a course on how to become a music teacher, a drum teacher. So I thought, hey, I think I'd like to take that course because I've taught a few lessons at that time, quite a few lessons at that time, but I'd taken hundreds and hundreds, maybe in the thousands by that time. I had taken so many lessons. Plus, I was actively taking a weekly lesson at music school. Plus, learning from the other students. There were some awesome players when I was in music school that I learned a lot from, aka Mike Rittenhouse. So what ended up happening was I took that course. They set me up with the students. They sort of gave me a little bit of, here's what you're going to teach them. And, I had to make active notes, and because it was a class. I was being marked on this class. It wasn't just me teaching a kid and the kid leaves and that's the end of it. No. There was my actual drum teacher would come and watch me teach and try to figure out some ideas for me to become better because he'd had a lot of experience teaching. He was teaching at a college level, so he was an excellent teacher. So anyways, that's where it really began, was teaching at Mohawk College in that course, how to become a drum teacher. After that, I quickly realized that almost all of the teachers, actually not almost, actually all the teachers that were professional full-time musicians at Mohawk taught on the side. Some of them taught practically full-time. Some of them did teach full-time and gigged sort of part-time, but they were still professional musicians. Others played full-time and taught part-time. So there's a mixture, that's what I started doing. I started doing playing and teaching. I did both, and I've always done both right up till now, playing and teaching. And there's nothing better than being able to teach when you know what the student is going through on stage. I mean, ultimately, that's what you want to be able to do, is convey what to do on stage. That's the most important thing, in my opinion, because performance is the ultimate goal for any student. So that's where it started. And then I got my first job in Oakville at the Music Shack, which was located on Kerr Street and Lakeshore. And I worked there for a number of years. Now, after that, I worked at a bunch of different music schools. Revolution Music, also in Oakville. Addison Music, also in Oakville. And then I worked at Capstone Music in Burlington for many, many years. I worked there for a long, long time. I think I was their first drum teacher, actually, at Capstone Music. And then, of course, I branched out into doing my own thing. At first, my own thing was going to people's houses. And then when I got a place that wasn't an apartment or a townhouse, and I could actually teach out of a house that, didn't bother anybody else noise-wise, I started teaching out of my own home. Thus, Tim Conley Drums Teaching School was born. And I still do that to this day. I still have students that come to my house. I also work at a music school. I work at the Merriam School of Music currently. And like I said, I evolved through many, I think I worked at the Oakville School of Music as well. I taught at many music camps, the Guitar Workshop Plus at Appleby College. I was a drum teacher at Appleby College, I think, for 5 years. I've had tons of teaching jobs, private lessons. And then it morphed into group lessons. I started doing a lot of master classes, especially when I was doing clinics. I would often do a clinic and also master classes in conjunction with that clinic. As well as doing master classes, I started doing band classes. Now, I don't do a lot of band classes. It's something that, because I don't play guitar or piano or anything like that, it's hard for me to teach band class, because I even though I understand music theory, I cannot demonstrate. I can't pick up the guitar and demonstrate. At the music school that I work at, there's a drummer there. His name is Mike Siracusa. Great guy, great drummer. I love this guy. He's so awesome. But he also plays, I've seen him play guitar, but I think he also plays piano. So he's playing guitar in the class, so he's able to help the bass player, the singer, obviously the guitarist, and of course he's a professional drummer for a living, so he can also help the drummer. So he can help everybody. When I do the band class, I take a different approach. I think I teach more from, not from what you're going to play on the guitar, but how you're going to develop as a band, the whole band thing, image, the way you look, the way you sound, equipment, putting the songs together, and of course helping the drummer to play the correct thing against what the bass player is doing, against what the guitar player, the keyboardist. And I also teach them how to collaborate, to think of themselves as a group and not 4 or 5 individuals coming together. So I teach them how to listen to one another and how you feed off one another. So that bass player is doing some funky thing and he might be punching out the 2 and the 4 or the and of 4 or whatever. Well, I get that drummer to punch out those same things, so you've got dynamics, because a lot of bands really lack in dynamics. And that's one of the big things that I teach. So I don't take the same approach as Mike, obviously, because he's way more skilled at playing other instruments than me. But I take a band approach where I'm teaching them more about being in a band and getting along in a band and all the things that are involved in being in a band. So it's not just teaching drums for me, even though that is my main gig. That's my main gig now. So currently I teach, I think I have about 15 or 16 students that I teach online and in person. And that's Tim Conley drums. And then at the Merriam School of Music, I think I have 28 students around there. I don't currently have any band students. And I also teach snare drum lessons, specifically snare drum to drumline players as well. That's my other thing that I do. So I teach all the rudiments. And when it comes to working for a music school, let's talk about the ups and downs of being Tim Conley drums, my own boss, versus the music school. The first thing is working for Merriam School of Music. It's a massive music school. It's the second largest music school in, if I'm not mistaken, either North America or the world. I'm not sure. It could just be North America. I know there's a music school in LA that has more students, but Merriam's got over 3,500 students, and there's no shortage of drum students. If I'm not mistaken, there's a current waiting list. So I always am getting new students. So if one decides to leave, which is unfortunate, I can always get a new student so I can keep the money flowing in. So at a school, because it's an established school with an excellent reputation, it's a great facility, everything is positive. When the students come through on their tour, whether they're an adult student or a kid with their parents, there's always this impressive idea that the school wants to get across, that we want to impress these people to sign them up. Now, the facility itself is quite impressive. The teachers, they hire some great teachers. There's some really awesome teachers at the school, Dave McDougall and Matt and Mike and Ryan, Jordan, Miko. Even though I haven't met him yet, but he's fairly new. Anyways, there's a lot of great teachers there, and I'm just one of the drum teachers there. But I have quite a few students now. I teach 3 days a week there, and I teach 2 days a week at my house. That's 5 days a week. I used to teach 7 days a week. I was a full-time, hardcore teaching every day, and that was just income. I needed the extra money. Now things are a little bit different, and I don't need to work 7 days a week. I'm working 5 days a week, and I like to take Friday, Saturday off because those are gig nights quite often. And also, it's just nice to be home with the family on the weekend, So my evolution of teaching has a lot to do with who I was studying with. That really factors in who your drum teacher is while you're taking lessons and teaching. You are affected by your drum teacher. Now, Kevin Dempsey had a huge effect on me, who was a teacher at Mohawk College, and he's a fantastic drummer, a killer jazz drummer, like one of the best in the country, in my opinion. Kevin is so great. He was funny. We became very close friends. I went to his wedding. We were close in age. That was another thing, is that when I was actually studying with Kevin, he's only, I think, 3 or 4 years older than me. So we were pretty close in age. So we had that bond because we had the music, we had the drums, we had the age commonality, and we became very close. Another teacher at Mohawk College I became extremely close to, and I'm still close to this day, is Ernie Porthouse. Now, Ernie is a fantastic drummer. He can play anything: rock, pop, funk, jazz, great Latin player, great Brazilian player, odd time, fusion, you name it, Ernie can play it. But his main gig is with the Hamilton Philharmonic. He's an incredible orchestral drummer, and he takes on many, many hats in that role. You know, timpani, percussion, shakers, tambourines. His main thing, of course, is snare drum. He is one of the best snare drum players around, period. And I was told by a teacher from Humber College that Ernie is probably the best reader of music that he'd ever seen. Now, I experienced some of Ernie's reading just watching him running down some snare drum etudes. And for you drummers that are not familiar with snare drum etudes, it's basically pieces of music that are designed specifically to be played on a snare drum. And it's something that I actually teach quite a bit. Now, I don't work a lot on snare drum etudes with my drum set players, maybe a little bit, but I definitely work on it with my, if you were to have a drum line type of a player, you definitely have to work on snare drum etudes with him, because that's basically what they're playing. It's not really, especially when there's, 4, 5, 6 snare drum players playing, they all have to be timed together playing the same thing. So I learned a ton from Ernie. He was a fantastic player, and his touch, his technique, the way he holds the sticks, all the things I learned from him, absolutely amazing. Another guy I studied with was Paul DeLong, another fantastic Toronto drummer, one of the best in the country, another guy that can play anything. He's most famously known for playing with Lawrence Gowan, who is the keyboard player and backup singer in Styx. He also played with Kim Mitchell and a whole slew of other Canadian bands. He's a go-to guy in the Toronto music scene, Lion King, any kind of theater. He's an outstanding reader. He's an outstanding player. His band, I think it's called The Code, Jazz Fusion. He also has another band called The One, something like that. It's also jazz fusion. He's a huge jazz fusion fan, and he's a monster jazz fusion player. So check out Paul DeLong if you ever get a chance. He's phenomenal. And I studied with him for quite a long time, on and off though. On and off with Paul. It wasn't steady weekly, but it was on and off. And then I learned how to play linear funk with Rick Gratton. Only studied with Rick for a couple of years, but I learned a ton of stuff from him in terms of, that David Garibaldi linear funk type style. And Rick was a master player in that linear funk, and chops master, just incredible feel. And he used to play in a bunch of, another Toronto guy, much like Paul in the day. I don't think Rick plays anymore. I think he just masters recordings now. Or he does, like anytime somebody puts a book out, he's the guy that does all the print music. He writes it all out. That's what he does now. I'm pretty sure so Alfred Drums puts a book out. Rick Gratton's the guy that does all the musical parts. He writes it all up. I'm pretty sure that's what he does. So anyways, enough about the teachers. Let's focus on what I teach. Now, I teach drums and percussion, and I focus on a technique-oriented basis. So meaning to be able to play, great grooves, smooth, fluid motion, awesome phrasing, combining maybe a three bar groove with a 1 bar fill, or a grouping of 5 and 1, or a grouping of 7 and 8, meaning 7 bars of groove, 1 bar of fill, or we can do 3 bars of groove, 2 bars of fill, whatever, getting that phrasing down. But I always start off with technique, how to hold the sticks, how to get the sticks to bounce, the free stroke, the Gladstone technique, which is fingers, the Moeller technique, which is the whipping motion, and of course the Buddy Rich push-pull. And also something I learned fairly recently, believe it or not, and I changed my technique a little bit. I learned this from Todd Zuckerman, which is flagpole snap. Similar to the Buddy Rich technique, but it's a little bit different, and it's more designed for quick 16th note type patterns. That's what the flagpole snap is designed for. Now, I think I have a video on my channel about that, but I think I'm going to do another one soon as well. So teaching drums, I've had some students over the years that were amazing students, fantastic people. I've made a lot of friends with, especially with adult students. And then my young students that grew up into adults, I run into them once in a while, and they're in their 30s and 40s now. Some of my, 10-year-old kids I taught years ago, they're like 40 years old now. And incredible to run into them and, hey, Tim, how are you? They still remember me, and you still teaching drums, and, all that stuff is fantastic. And then, of course, the relationships and the bonds that I've created with some of my adult students. I couldn't possibly name them all. I've had so many. I really enjoy teaching adult students, but I will admit this. Kids will join and stick with it. Now, whether it's the parents saying, you got to learn how to play an instrument, or it's the kid legitimately enjoying the instruments and he just wants to continue to take lessons. The longest period I've ever gone is 10 years with a student by the name of Kevin. And currently I have a home studio, Tim Conley drum student, Julian. I think I've been teaching him for 8 years. So those are my two longest, pretty sure. I've had students, one lesson, didn't like it, quit. That happens all the time. Adults are more prone to quitting, though, than the kids. That's the point I was trying to make. The kids will stick around way longer for lessons, years. Whereas, you get some adults that stuck around for months and years and stuff like that. But then you get the guy that tells you he's so enthusiastic, he buys a drum kit, gets himself a pad, he's watching every Steve Smith and Vinnie Colaiuta imaginable video, shows up to the lessons and goes, holy shit, this is a lot harder than I thought, and quits. That can be really frustrating element of teaching is I'm still getting paid for that one lesson, but ultimately the goal is get people excited, get them motivated, get them excited about music and wanting to play drums. And I always give off a really positive, excitement-oriented vibe. That's my style of teaching. It's very similar to the way I learned from Dom Famularo. Dom Famularo was the most exciting, awesome drum teacher of all the teachers I've ever had, and I've had a lot of teachers. I'm not going to get into that anymore because I talked about it, but Dom was fantastic, and he changed the way that I taught. He made me realize that if you want to keep students, you've got to create excitement. You've got to get them motivated. You've got to get them thinking about drums, thinking about music, and get it in their head. And then it's not just, oh, my drum lessons today. I got to go to my drum lesson. I'm going to learn some new stuff or whatever. It's, yay, today's my drum lesson. And they've been thinking about it all week. You want to create that type of excitement. So that's how I evolved over the years. Studying with Dom, I realized that the best way for me to keep my students, to get students, obviously you got to advertise and put your name out there, word of mouth, you got to advertise. And when you're in a music school, though, they just show up. You don't have to. School does all the advertising. You don't really have to do anything. They just show up. But you got to keep them. I have one of the highest retention rates at Merriam School of Music because I create excitement. Even if the kid isn't, like some kids show up for lessons and sometimes you don't really do much with them. You'll be lucky if you get to teach them one thing because they just want to talk to you, or they just want to tell you about their new video game, or in some cases, I've had to deal with kids that are sort of traumatized. And I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist or anything, but sometimes people show up at the lessons. I remember this one female, her job was stressing her out as a lady coming to my house, and she shows up and starts bawling her eyes out. Well, how do you deal with that? Let's just forget about that and play drums. No, I turned it around and I said, drums is actually a soothing thing. It's loud, but it's soothing in the sense that it soothes your soul. It gets those things deep down inside of you that you don't even realize you have inside of you. And then you realize that you need rhythm, you need music, you need this in your life. And then it becomes, instead of alcohol and drugs, drumming and music become an outlet. This is what I teach my adult students. A little bit to the kids, but the kids, generally speaking, don't have as many issues, if you want to call it, as the adult students. But if I have adult students that are telling me, they're having trouble in their life and they're splitting up with their wife or whatever, I always tell them that the drums can be your outlet. Go to those drums and hammer on them and play some songs. And if you're lucky enough and skilled enough, get into a band and play music and forget about all the things that are on your mind. It's only temporary. You still got to deal with all the shit in your life, but drums can allow you to escape temporarily. And that's the beauty of drums. Now for the kids, it's playing in church, it's playing in school, it's playing in a band that they formed with their friends. And it's the excitement. I can remember being 14, 15 years old, and man, it was exciting for me to play in a band, play drums at school. I loved performing to this day, still enjoy performing. But back then it was the ultimate to get up at that high school battle of the bands when in 1982, I think it was, and I got beat by Jeff Healey. His band, Jeff Healey, before he was famous, he played in a battle of bands at my high school, and he won. And I was like, who is this blind guy that can play guitar like God? He was amazing even then before he became famous. And anyways, I'll put a link in the description because I did a whole video talking about Jeff that particular night, how I was ready to quit music and quit drumming at the age, I think I was 16 or 17 at the time. But anyways, drum teaching is fulfilling. I do enjoy it. I mean, I've had my down times where the student wasn't interested. I've had moments where people quit. The quitting is normal. I've learned to accept that. In the beginning, it was difficult. I didn't understand. Well, they don't like me. It must be me, But I realized that sometimes people just lose interest in things. Kids play hockey, they play soccer, they try different things out. Adults, the same thing. Sometimes, like I said, they realize, oh, geez, this is a lot harder. I don't really want to put the time in, so they just quit. And then there's the ones that put the time in, that make the effort, that get better. That's what it's all about for me, is seeing the excitement rise in them, seeing them develop as musicians, seeing them having fun. I'm having fun. I mean, I can remember one of my friends who was a 3-time world heavyweight jiu-jitsu champion. His name was Stu Martial Arts. Forgotten his name right now at this particular time. But anyways, Stuart's Martial Arts. And I learned from him, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. You can make a living doing anything if you put your mind to it and you put your effort in. People that go for things and put their heart and soul into things, whatever it is, doesn't have to just be music, whatever it is, they're the most successful. People that don't quit because they come across a blockade, because they struggle, because they go and they see Vinnie Colaiuta and then they go, oh my God, I'll never play like that, and they quit. I never understood that. I went to Thomas Lang's drum camp. 3 days with Thomas Lang, watching this guy destroy everybody in the class. His playing is outer worldly. Phenomenal, phenomenal player. World class on the highest level. Did it destroy me where I walked away being all, I'll never play like Thomas, so why would I want to continue? No, the opposite. He inspired me. He motivated me. He made me realize I got a long way to go. There's no such thing as getting to the top and, yeah, I'm the greatest player on earth, so I don't need to practice. I don't need to get any better. That's all baloney, unless maybe you're Buddy Rich or Vinnie Colaiuta. But when I saw Thomas play and I realized, geez, I got a long way to go, Now, I have no interest in being Thomas Lang. I mean, he inspired me, but he inspired me to practice to make myself better, not to, I've got to practice so much to reach to Thomas's level. I will never be at Thomas's level, and that's okay. I've accepted that. I'll never be Steve Smith. I'll never be Vinnie Colaiuta. I'll never be Dave Weckl. I'll never be any of these guys. I look at those guys for inspiration and motivation. I never quit thinking, geez, I'll never play like Dave Weckl, so I'll just quit. I never think like that, and you shouldn't either. And I inspire my students. Look, they'll say to me, how do you play that so fast? Or how do you play that so smooth? Well, it's practice. I put the old saying, you got to put 10,000 hours in before you're a professional. I put way, way more than 10,000 hours in, let me tell you. Now, my goal was never to be the greatest drummer on earth. My goal was, I want to be good enough that I can make a living. People listen to me and they respect me and they enjoy my playing, and I'm satisfied with me. Be comfortable in your own skin, your own drumming skin. So, if I've inspired you in any way to take lessons, I am available for online Zoom lessons. All you need is a PayPal account and Zoom, and put Zoom in music mode, and we could be doing lessons too. I can teach you all these different techniques, grooves, phrasing, musicality. So if you're on the fence and you're thinking about taking some online lessons, I can tell you that I'm a lot cheaper than Vinny. Chad Wackerman too. I remember inquiring about lessons with Chad, and he got back to me and he was very gracious and awesome. $400 American an hour. So that's close to $600 Canadian. And Chad's great and all, awesome. I just could not afford that. I did take a few lessons with Steve Smith and Dave Weckl. They were a little bit cheaper than Chad, but Vinny as well in the same range. I think Vinny was $450 American. Now, I did go to Vinny's master class, but I never took an individual lesson with Vinny. It's just so much money, I mean, these guys are great, but I can learn from other guys and be equally as happy. One thing I forgot to mention, guys, is one thing that I've always enjoyed is giving stuff to my students. And I've always given them loads of things. So I'll give them Tim Conley drum stickers. Let's see here, Tim Conley drums. This is a small version. There's one right behind me here, but this is a small version. Tim Conley drums, posters. I'm endorsed by Vic Firth, so I will give them, let's see if you can see one. They're all white. I know there's some black ones in here. They're Vic Firth stickers. And I really enjoy sharing and giving stuff to my students, because who doesn't? Here we go. Here's the black version of the Vic Firth sticker right here. Who doesn't enjoy getting something free? Even if it's a poster, a sticker. Sometimes I've given away hats and t-shirts. I'm doing a drum clinic coming up soon. I'm going to give stuff away at my drum clinic. It's partially advertising myself, but it's also fun to give stuff away. And I can remember being at many clinics and whatnot, lessons, master classes, and they would give us a poster and whatnot. And it was awesome. I was thrilled to be able to get a poster or, a drum head, whatever was given out. I always thought it was great, and I was always excited to receive it. So, I like to give back to my students as well. So I enjoy giving them free stuff. It doesn't bother me at all to do that. I actually really enjoy it. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll catch you next time. And as always, keep drumming. See ya.